Welcome to Wittenberg Academy's Latin 1 lectures. This first lesson is going to cover an introduction to the course and also the pronunciation of Latin. It should be a rather short video. I'm Pastor H.R. Curtis. I received my master's degree in classics from Washington University in St. Louis and am currently serving as a translator and editor, assistant editor, for Concordia Publishing House in some of the translation work of Martin Luther's sermons and Johann Gerhardt's theological works. The two texts that we're going to use for this course, our main text here is first year Latin, specifically edited for this course. All the assignments are spelled out right in the text. When to make your flashcards, those are spelled out in the text as well. And we'll get to this book in just a moment for today's lesson as well. And then there's Wheelock's Latin. This is the standard college level Latin book that you're going to encounter in just about any standard college program in the United States or Canada today. It's a very good book. We'll mainly be using it in this course for its exercises. It has exercises that you can self-grade, and those are going to be a part of our weekly assignments as we get into the meat of the course. For today, though, we're just going to cover the pronunciation of Latin. If you'll open up your first year Latin book to page 8, we'll take a look at that. Oh, and I should say both of these books, both the first year Latin book and Wheelock, have excellent introductory material about the history of Latin up to today, and I encourage you to read those over the course of this week if you haven't read them already. So this is lesson 2. That first lesson covers the information about the history of Latin, as I said, and so now we're going to talk about the letters and their sounds. So paragraph 1, the alphabet. In English, we use the letters of the Latin alphabet, to which we've added the letters J and W. In place of the J, the Latin had I as a consonant, which is written just like I, the vowel, but it's equivalent to our J, and as in German or other European languages, it's pronounced with a Y sound, with a Y sound. As in English, the vowels are A, E, I, O, and U, and Y, although Y is used very little in Latin. It's actually, that's how they would make the Greek letter upsilon. We'll get to that as it comes up. And the other letters are consonants. Latin has fewer sounds than English and consequently is easier to pronounce correctly. Each vowel has a long and a short sound, the long taking about twice the time of the short vowel. The consonants always have the same sound. At this point, we should mention that we're going to be using the classical pronunciation in this course. Ecclesiastical Latin, or the Latin of the Middle Ages, or Latin as it's learned in German schools, is pronounced somewhat differently. It's not difficult to understand once you know classical pronunciation, but classical pronunciation is what you are most likely to encounter as you move forward with your Latin into the college level courses, and so that's what we're going to be using. So on page 8, you'll notice the macron, that long symbol over the A, it's called the macron, and it indicates that the vowel is long. And so the long A, the letter we call A in Latin, is called A. So this is A, father. And then next you see the letter, what we call E in Latin, but it's what we call E in English. But in Latin that's A. So a long A is A, as in they. A long I, what we call the letter I, is E, as in machine. O, the long O, is as in holy, the O sound. And along U, along what we call U, U, as in boot. And then the short versions of all those are A, I, O, and U. And so the short vowels are just as you would pronounce them in English. A, I, O, and as in aha, met, pin, 40, and full. So It's the long vowels that are somewhat troubling to beginning students, that the letter A is not the letter A in Latin, it's the letter A. The letter E is not the letter E in Latin, it's the letter A. And the letter I in Latin is not the letter I, it's the letter I and E. So again, practice those, and then, well, let's practice them together. Take a look at the Latin under each section. So back to the long vowels. For the letter A, we have fama and mater. So fama, mater. And then for the letter E, we have debet and telum. Debet, telum. And then liber and boni. Roma, nolo. Cornu, unus. So I'll read those again, and you can repeat them if you like. Fama, mater, debet, telum, liber, boni, Roma, nolo, cornu, unus. Notice in any two-syllable word, as all these were, the accent is always on the first syllable. We'll talk more about accent in a moment. But look at those two words, cornu and unus. It's not cornu, it's cornu. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then the short vowels. We have fama. So you notice the first one is long, fa, and the second one is short, ma. Fama. Roma. Debet. Mater. Mito. Lucius. Boni. Cornu. Telum. Unus. All right. And now diphthongs. This is where two vowels combine to make a sound, and the Latin letters a, e, or what look like to us a and e, a, e, is in English like the first vowel in isle, and so that's Kaiser, Kaiser, not Caesar, because the C is always hard in Latin, makes a K sound. Kaiser, and not Caesar, not Caesar, but Kaiser. A-U, A-U, makes the ow sound, so cauda, cauda. The O-A, or in English the O-E sound, as in boil, poina, poina. Okay, page 9. The consonants. The consonants are pronounced as in English, except the following. As I just mentioned, C is always hard, like a K sound, Kaiser. G is always hard, as in give. It's gamma, not gemma, gamma. The I as a consonant, the I, before a vowel in the same syllable is like Y. So you'll find this written sometimes in Latin. They'll use the letter J, to what we call the letter J, to indicate when I is being used as a consonant. So the example here that he has, uni, uni, would sometimes be spelled in a text you're reading with the letter J. It might be spelled J-U-N-I, uni. Then you would know that it was to be pronounced as a consonant. But it's usually very clear when I is being used as a consonant. S is always hard, as in S or lace, never like Z. That is, it's always unvoiced. The letter S is different than Z, only in the fact that your throat vibrates with a Z sound, Z, as opposed to S, and you can feel that. Same with B instead of P, and M, and so forth, voiced and unvoiced consonants. And then the V in classical Latin is always pronounced like a W. Via, via, there. Very well. Another point that he does not mention here is when to know when a vowel is long or short. Obviously, if your author has been nice and has marked it with the macron, with that long symbol, then you know when the vowel is long. But other than that, there are a couple rules, and for that we can turn to Wheelock, has a good supplement here. So if you open up Wheelock to page Roman numeral 37, Roman numeral 37, this is his discussion of the different letters and how they are pronounced, and it's stuff that we've pretty much just covered, so we don't need to look over it. But he has a longer discussion. This is both the good and the bad thing about Wheelock's book. If you want a longer discussion of something, it can be found here, but it's also easy to get bogged down. But if you look on his page, Roman numeral page 39, in his introduction, or his introductio, we can talk about how syllables are formed, and especially syllable quantity. So I'm looking in the middle of page 39, Roman numeral 39 in Wheelock's book. Syllable quantity. A syllable is long by nature if it contains a long vowel or a long diphthong, and all diphthongs are long. A syllable is long by position if it contains a short vowel followed by two or more consonants, or by X, which is a double consonant. It's a K and an S together. Otherwise, a syllable is short. So again, that'll become important as we move into different noun and verb forms about where the accent in a word falls, observing long and short vowels. All right, very well. Back to our first year Latin book, page 9. We will take a look at these memory verses for this week. Florus to Hadrian. Ego nolo Caesar esse. Ego nolo Caesar esse. Now I'll say the whole thing and repeat the whole thing. Ego nolo Caesar esse. So that's just to help you learn to say it, these verses. We don't expect you to know how all the words fit together. Ambulare, ambulare. Notice where the accent falls. Ambulare per Britannos, Britannos. Ambulare per Britannos. Try the whole thing. Ego nolo Caesar esse, ambulare per Britannos. Scythicus, Scythicus. Pati, Pati. Pruinas, Pruinas. Scythicus Pati Pruinas. Listen to the whole thing. Ego nolo Caesar esse, ambulare per Britannos, Scythicus Pati Pruinas. And then Hadrian responds. Ego nolo Florus esse. Ego nolo Florus esse. Ambulare per tabernas. Ambulare per tabernas. Latitare per popinas. Latitare per popinas. Popinas. Ego nolo Florus esse. Ambulare per tabernas. Latitare per popinas. So there is a bit of a verse between the Emperor Hadrian and one of his courtiers, Florus. And Hadrian was indeed a poet, writing poetry both in Latin but especially in Greek. Perhaps we'll have opportunity to talk more about Hadrian another time. This concludes our introduction to Latin pronunciation. You can, at this point, practice a little bit, read the introduction to Wheelock's book, the introduction to first year Latin, and practice more of this pronunciation out loud. Watch the last part of this video to repeat those verses. Try to memorize the verses. And once you feel very comfortable with the pronunciation, go ahead and move on to the next video where we get into our first lesson, first real lesson and our first real assignments.